You need?
Yeah,
the pen you'll have.
Make sure it's red.
Okay. I'm calling this house to order. Good morning, gentlemen. Well, the studio is quite an interesting and intense place right now. Very good morning to you all and a warm welcome to KFM VPN. As Views, People and News here on 933 KFM. I'm your host, Judith Atim. And today we are looking at matters shaping the political space ahead of nominations. And in the studio, it's an all-male panel, starting with Mr. Enoch Barata, the Director for Legal Affairs at the NRM Secretariat. Good morning, Mr. Barata.
Good morning, Judith. I'm glad to be here for the first time. Good morning to our listeners and colleagues on the show. I'm happy to be here and thank you for having me.
And this is not going to be the last time, I can assure you. Also with us in the studio is Mr. Joseph Ocheno, political commentator and UPC ideologue. And I should also remind you, he picked nomination forms aspiring for the presidency. Warm welcome to the show, Joseph.
The definition of picking nomination forms, is that the issue? Or that
No. We are discussing matters ahead, shaping the political space ahead of nominations. So who are people going to be nominated?
But you're absolutely fantastic. You're absolutely fantastic. You design and make coffee. You served us coffee, and
it's still brewing.
My red cup is here, and you've guessed that fantastic because one guest has just offered me a fantastically red pen.
What does it say?
It's
Anything
part
special?
of his DNA.
Okay.
No advert, but fantastic morning. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you for making time. We also have with us Mr. Henry Muguzi, Executive Director, Alliance for Finance Monitoring, and a regular guest on KFM VPN. Good morning, Henry, and welcome.
Good morning,
to the
Judith,
show.
and good morning, listeners. Quite a pleasure for me to be sharing the platform with these gallant men and ideologues of UPC. So I am quite
But there's only one ideologue of UPC.
Privileged
Stop denying.
to share the platform. Thank you.
Is that why you opted out of red? I can out you now.
Good. Thank you, Henry. Last but not least, Mr. George Museveni, advocate and MP aspirant for Kira Municipality, also a member of the National Unity Platform Party. A warm welcome to the show, George.
Thank you, Judith. Good morning to the listeners, and always a pleasure to be here and to share the platform with these gentlemen.
All right.
George, have you got the card?
Well, there's no other choice, but the party has no other choice.
Very well then. So,
Enoch, you know when you get a star player, you can't bench them.
If you did, the owners of the club.
He's boasting and he forgets I'm actually a potential voter, so talk nicely to me.
Since UPC has no candidate.
you're a potential voter.
In the sense that I live within the constituency.
Yeah, but are you registered to vote there?
No, but I could still do so, you know.
It's too late.
If it's a UPC government would ensure that you've got an opportunity to up the registration. Important point, actually, up to weeks towards elections, because this thing should be able to be done.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. So, today we are focusing on the critical issues shaping Uganda's political landscape as we head towards the nomination period for the upcoming elections. Well, the political temperature is rising, and recent events have added layers of complexity to the national conversation. We've just seen the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue hold a summit, a platform intended to foster consensus and dialogue among political parties. However, its effectiveness and the commitment of all key players to its principles have often been a subject of debate, with some major parties opting to stay away. On another front, the Electoral Commission has cast a shadow of doubt over the presidential nomination of the National Unity Platform Party leader, Robert Chagulanyi. It says that NUP did not collect enough signatures to meet the nomination requirements, which is a development that could significantly alter the race and ignite a fresh wave of political and legal battles. And adding a fascinating twist to this narrative is also the Democratic Party President and Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Norbert Mao, who has made some very pointed comments suggesting that the fundamental question of a political transition will not be resolved through the electoral process alone, Instead, he claims that these discussions are being held in the rooms that matter, a statement that raises questions about the transparency and efficacy of the democratic process and whether the future of the nation is being decided behind closed doors. Well, these three issues and more shall be the focus of our conversation. They are interconnected threads in the fabric of Uganda's political future, each with the potential to either strengthen or undermine the democratic foundations of the country. And we'll be discussing what these developments mean for the political space, the nomination process, and the long-term stability of Uganda. But before we delve into that, let's have a quick look at what made it in the news this week. On Monday, the BBC released a documentary of an investigation they carried out for 2.5 years, uncovering evidence of an organized prostitution ring in Dubai, exploiting young women from Uganda. Named Death in Dubai, #Dubai Porta Potty, it focuses on Charles Abi Mwesigwa, a former London bus driver, filmed by an undercover reporter, claiming that the women in his network could do pretty much everything clients requested. Survivors told the BBC they had been lured to the UAE with promises of routine or normal work, only to find themselves indebted, coerced, and trapped in sex work. And on Thursday, back at home here in Uganda, leaders of 6 political parties, the NRM, the Democratic Party, the Uganda People's Congress and the Forum for Democratic Change, as well as the Justice Forum, and the PPP held talks under the flag of the Inter-Party Coalition for Dialogue at Kololo. The summit, running under the theme Together for a Peaceful and Sustainable Uganda, was chaired by President Museveni, who later handed over the mantle of leadership to DP's Norbert Mao after 5 years at its helm. In his address, President Museveni called on Uganda's political leaders to embrace peaceful dialogue and reject violence as the country heads towards the 2026 elections. And the Electoral Commission has, for a 4th time, made adjustments in its roadmap to the 2026 general elections, this time indicating that presidential candidates will officially begin their campaigns on Monday 29th, 2025. The announcement was made by the EC chairperson, Justice Simon Biabakama, during a press briefing where he emphasized the Commission's commitment to transparency, fairness, and strict adherence to electoral laws throughout the campaign period. The presidential nominations are expected next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, while parliamentary nominations for parliamentary candidates also moved from October 15th to 16th, 2025 to 22nd to 23rd September 2025. Yesterday, also the Commission informed the NUP President Robert Chagulanyi through a letter signed by the EC chairperson Justice Simon Biabakama that out of the 130 districts from which the NUP team had submitted signatures, only 80 met the minimum threshold. The remaining 18 districts fell short of the required number of 100 registered voters per district, a key requirement under Section 10 of the Presidential Elections Act, Cap 177. On Thursday again, the National Resistance Movement Party held its party primary elections for youth and members of parliament across 151 districts. Mpaire Diana won the slot for National Youth Member of Parliament, female. Tumweba Zemwine took the Youth MP Western Region slot as Elma Capel Chala held the Youth MP for Northern Region. Samuel Begira is the flag bearer for the Central Region, while Tanga Collins reclaimed victory as National Youth League chairperson, beating Brenda Kichoncho. And on Thursday, the judiciary held the 8th Benedicto Chiwanuka Memorial Lecture in honor of Uganda's first post-independence Chief Justice, who was abducted and killed by Idi Amin's regime during the Idi Amin's regime in 1972. The keynote speaker, former president of Uganda Law Society, Francis Gimaria, used the event to question why courts continue to deny Dr. Kizza Besigye bail despite the prolonged delays in his trial, saying that the 300-day detention is a test of Uganda's rule of law. In the same line, Minister of Internal Affairs General Kahinda Otafire used his address to the Uganda Law Society gathering in the Sam Kalega Njuba Memorial Lecture to criticize Ugandans who chose silence in the deplorable state of affairs in Uganda, other than speaking up and challenging injustice. He cited the continued detention of Dr. Kizza Besigye, that before the public opinion he is innocent, who should either be tried expeditiously if found guilty or freed if the state fails to find evidence against him. Gentlemen, It's been a loaded week, as you have been following and as you can hear. So very quickly, there's so much actually that you can talk about. Some of them are linked to our discussion for today already. Who do I start with? Enoch, do I start with you? Okay, just you'll give us your reflection on any of this issue, one or two, and then we'll just move. We will be taking a break at 9:30.
Yes. Thank you again for hosting me, and thank the listeners who are joining in on 93.3 KFM.
You got that right for a first time, yes.
Yes. So yes, indeed, it's been a loaded week, and we have there's been a string of things. Some related, some not particularly related, but perhaps the underlying theme in all the significant events and occurrences in the week is that there is an aspiration, there is a general aspiration for peace, a general aspiration for good governance, a general aspiration for justice, both in the in a political sense, in a social sense, in even a judicial sense. So that is an encouraging thing for me to note, generally from the Ugandan public, because I want to believe that all the events, for instance, that you have highlighted, all those people are generally the representatives of the Ugandan public. Mm-hmm. So it is, for me, a positive to pick from all those events. The details, of course, the details, of course, spur discussion in terms of what are the appropriate methods of achieving this peace, this good governance, this justice, and what should be done to achieve those, and what should be improved and what shouldn't, what should be dropped. Mm-hmm. So that is the general trend that I see. I also see that effectively we are in we are fully into the electoral cycle leading up to the 2026 general elections, and so far my observation is so far so good. I haven't seen any significant issues right now. Even this NUP signature issue, that is not, I think, a big deal. I'm sure it's not like they have been told that they can't qualify. So far so good. The electoral roadmap starts, I think, on the campaign. Campaigns start on 29th for the presidential candidates, so that is really by, I think, the end of this week, end of next week, or beginning of the other one, thereabouts. So for me, it's I like to take the positives, and things are looking upwards, and it's a good thing. There was, of course, that one incident which seemed to cast a very bad light on Uganda, that investigation about what I can call sex trafficking, or people trafficking, or human trafficking, which was very unfortunate. When something like that happens, sometimes, depending on how it is covered, it can appear as if it was a Ugandan thing, but I would like to just say, really, that is one criminal man and he should not be used to paint the rest of us in that light. He's one criminal man, and hopefully the law will deal with him. I think those are my preliminary observations.
Thank you, Joseph. Just your quick observations on the issues that we've highlighted.
There are many, and they're mixed. But I had elected not to mention actually the sex scandal, but on the basis of the observation suggested by my colleague here that this is one criminal mind, I reject the idea on the basis of my experiences, and I really didn't want to dampen the moods and spirits of Kampala and all our listeners this morning, because I have been substantially involved, Judith, on these matters, rescuing Ugandans both from home and abroad, and while I'm here at home and while I'm abroad. And in many cases over the last several years, I have had people look for me merely on Facebook. One particular lady watched me, I think, on either Al Jazeera or one of those other global networks. And turns out that she actually didn't know me and then wasn't particularly sure, but thought quite clearly I was an East African because of my Ocheno name, managed to reach me. And it was horrific. On that, in return, turns out it was not about this Mwesigwa, the bus driver who should be driving Ugandan buses at Kampala, but turns out that that was a scheme organized by top guys here, and including top guys in government, my brother. And in that case, I managed to reach one of the lead individuals who happened to have been either between Entebbe and Kampala, but quite clearly a ring of people who export predominantly our young, beautiful, healthy girls abroad to make money. Part of the ring is the big guys in town, and to suggest that is a one-off thing is not true. But number two, I engaged, and government, including through my columns, thanks to your Sunday Monitor, some of these things have been picked, including by government ministers, not this month, not last year, but these are things that have been ongoing. That it should reach to where it is at the moment, it is terrible. You know, if this was a normal state, this would be a major election matter, and I hope it is. And if it were a normal state, somebody would be taking responsibility, and possibly some minister would be resigning. It's a shame on the Republic of Uganda that UPC gave a name for God and my country as part of our core thing. So our values are broken. Quickly then, Norbert Mao, my fantastic good friend, when I watched the clip initially, I thought that perhaps he had been misrepresented. And when I watched that, I thought maybe some journalist had provoked him, because Norbert is generally a very modest, organized guy, and a man full of sufficient language to use for the appropriate situations. Turns out that the response was rather long, seemingly very deliberate, seemingly very, very strategic, and if you consider all the contents, it's a massively loaded message that should really, really worry Ugandans, especially that Norbert tried to convince Ugandans, and I nearly got convinced that he'd actually joined this regime, I call it government on this occasion, to try and help moderate and lead us into transition. But that should really not be the tone of one modest moderator. Very, very scary. For Otafere to come in an extraordinarily fantastic way to now be the decent chap in town is a contradictory satire. Finally, we are saying this, but Kizza Besigye is Kizza Besigye, and we know his story. It cannot be normalcy and business as usual. And then, of course, from Besigye, then you conclude, since it's an open remarks, the NUP signature stuff. It will be part of those historical things. Let's hope and wait and see how it ends. At no time did I expect that NUP would struggle to get normal signatories. Maybe going forward, these are some of the things that we need to be looking at as part of electoral reforms, electoral reviews. And I think he really, really on the box for test is the Electoral Commission. On the test is Norbert Mao's ministry. On the test is this government going forward on whether or not they will be able to deliver free and fair elections in which competing political parties and organizations have got a possibility of going to government freely.
Thank you very much. Henry?
Yeah, so I'll pick up just one issue, the one that my brother Ocheno has just touched. I think the words Mao raises should not be taken lightly, and I'm equal of the view that we need to give it a thorough thought, because if you look at the kind of democracy we are practicing, I'm not convinced that we have the fundamentals that are needed to facilitate peaceful transfer of power from one man, from the current man to the next, through elections. I am not sure those fundamentals are in place as yet. And the reason I'm saying this is I'm looking around the world and I'm seeing how democracy has struggled. Democracies have failed to stand strong in the face of authoritarianism. And so even where there are countries where there's just been merely bouts of authoritarianism, democracies have never recovered. It's like you get a drop of salt and drop it into milk. Even if the milk is a whole drum, one drop can kill it. So just one bout of authoritarianism kills it. So in the absence of that, I am not sure that in this country, Uganda, that has never tested a peaceful transfer of power, and we have faced with a leader who is in the evening of his life, whether we can actually, for once, be able to achieve that. And so I'm certain that it's going to take other means. I don't think anybody of us would think about violent ones. I think this will have to be negotiated. I think it's we need, as a country, to reflect seriously on that. There has to be some trade-offs made in order for us to transit from one president to the next. Otherwise, we are likely to go back to the things we know how, the best way we know how, which is use of violent means.
Which is
that
rather
is
unfortunate. George?
I'll pick on three quick things. One is the Electoral Commission and its roadmap, the ever-changing roadmap. This would be almost the fourth time that we are in as many as 2-3 months that the Electoral Commission seems to be changing its roadmap for one reason or the other. Now, it doesn't matter what could be the underlying causes. The issue is that the haphazard changes seems to cast and form a perception that how prepared is the Electoral Commission in terms of the election. If you change the roadmap, it has extended it, it has reduced it at whims. This doesn't do so well on its credibility. And you know, in politics, even perceptions matter. Of course, even the issue raised about the signatures, it goes to issues of communication. That's why when you do things haphazardly, you tend to cast a doubt over everything that you do, however well-intentioned or meaningful it may be. The other issue you flagged was the inaugural Sam Kalega Njuba lecture, which I was gracious, which I was humbled or privileged to attend. And the remarks by the Minister of Internal Affairs, where he seemed to be sound like an activist, the way Ochieno would sound. Of course, it's important that such voices, I'm sure there are very few people who, like Ahindo Tafiro, can speak out and mention that actually there are things going wrong, and in his words, we are crossing the Rubicon. So I think it was also important that he speaks. Many times that's what you call people for. That at least speak out when it's all you can do. Of course, it's wrong if it's a Minister of Internal Affairs who is in charge of security when he starts sounding like he's advising or like an NGO condemning the injustices. You'd imagine that he would be in a place to act. And then lastly, of course, on the issue of the BBC documentary, sad as it is, I think it just opens up that long debate about the issue of externalization of labor. We have the laws in place, we have the regulations in place. The issue is how far do we go in ensuring that our people go out, many of them young in age. You go to Entebbe every week. I think there are so many girls who go out. How are they protected when they're out there? Because we hear these cries every day. This is just another one, and I'm sure in a month month we shall have forgotten it, and the cries will continue. I think should just shine a torch, and then the question is, when shall we act and see that there's some bit of responsiveness? Some of them go on different false promises. When they reach there, they can't get the help either to come back or even any form of support. I think that is something that we need to seriously deal with as a country.
Thank you. You're done?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you very much.
For now.
It's time for us to take a break, and then when we return, we are delving into our discussion, and I would like us to start by focusing on IPOD. Is it an effective tool for dialogue and consensus building, or is it just a forum for those already aligned with the current political order? That's after. Welcome back from the break. It's 9:32 a.m. and you're still tuned to KFM VPN here on 933 KFM. I'm your host, Judith Atim. We're discussing the matters shaping the political space ahead of the nominations, and I'm joined by Mr. Enoch Barata, Director for Legal Affairs of the NRM Secretariat, Mr. Joseph Ocheno, political commentator and UPC ideologue, Mr. Henry Muguzi, Executive Director, Alliance for Finance Monitoring, and last but not least, Mr. George Musisi, an advocate and member of MP aspirant for Kira Municipality. He's also a member of the National Unity Platform Party. Very quickly, gentlemen, we are starting with the recently concluded IPOD Summit. And yes, we know the parties that were represented. We know the narrative that IPOD, it's a tool for dialogue, it's a tool for building consensus, but most times there is also the question of whether this actually serves for this very intended purpose, or the IPOD is just a vehicle or a forum for those that are already aligned with the current political order. I'll start with you again, Mr. Barata. Do you think IPOD is actually an effective tool for dialogue and building consensus?
Yes, I think IPOD is certainly an effective tool. It is certainly a relevant and necessary tool. First, of course, on the simple premise that it is good. It is a good principle, and I don't know if anybody would oppose that principle, that political actors and political parties work in general terms together for the benefit of the country, that they collectively align with the same values on peace, on security, on democracy, and on the welfare of the people of Uganda. So to the extent that these are the fundamentals that keep Uganda together, and these are the fundamentals which all our people aspire to, IPOD is a vehicle to achieve that. Because it is not like these political actors or political players are trying to advance personal interests. Rather, they are all trying to advance national interests of our society, our community, except that they probably have different approaches or different ideas of approaches on how to achieve all this. You saw while IPOD has been there for a while, I think there was a lack of clarity on its functions in sufficient detail, perhaps. Now, in the recent amendment, the Political Parties and Organizations Act 2025, I think that was one of the things that was streamlined, to state the functions and to give some sort of better structure to IPOD. There is also another one called the National Consultative Forum, which is also provided for in law, except the National Consultative Forum is for the political parties represented in Parliament. But one fundamental change that was brought in the Amendment Act again is that they then now have provided for even the political parties that are not represented in the Parliament to be an organ of the National Consultative Forum. So I think the objective is correct, the objective is good, but like anything, things have to be built up. A lot of Uganda has been built up progressively, and several things are still in their nascent stages. And I think IPOD and NCF are some of those things, just like all these political parties. I think probably, I don't know if it is UPC or DP that is the oldest party.
Yeah.
And but even then, that is not really that old. You will agree. So so everything is, and you have had there have been those interruptions and so on and so forth. So we need to give time for these bodies to grow. As long as we agree on what the objective is, as long as we agree on what the purpose is, then the question will be, how can we strengthen these bodies, how can we strengthen these entities to achieve that which they actually need to achieve.
Okay, thank you. Joseph, let me come to you. on your thoughts on IPOD. Do you think it actually helps to build consensus, or it doesn't? Especially looking at our context right now, people are being arrested or kidnapped or abducted. I think George here they deal with these things every day in their own party. All these irregularities and illegalities that we see, how can IPOD actually help to unite not just the political parties, but by extension, the citizenry?
On the basis of our introduction, it's not going to be able to do so because, unfortunately, we've just been told within the last few days that the constitution of IPOD as of today is a coalition of the willing. Extremely divisive observation. Number two, if we all know that IPOD is, in terms of its origin, is a mini NGO, how an NGO backed by a European nation state could constitute the basis on which 60 years after our independence, a guiding principle for our leaders, including those who claim that as early as the 60s as young students, they knew what it was to bring us together and knew that what it was to address the core issues of our statehood. Whereas I was initially tempted to welcome IPOD in principle, even before the recent forced legislations around it. Now I'm wondering, do we have to legislate good manners, as you just asked? Just like this thing called patriotism. You lead from the top. At independence, it was common sense. We had leaders with diverse background, diverse political interests, but they were able to very quickly recognize that leaders of political parties and leaders of then kingdoms and republics, including my Toro Republic, were able to come together on a national agenda. And these guys, predominantly men, substantially respected themselves. They managed to bring us into independence. And following the elections at independence, we were able to have the winning political party asking for a government of national unity. They didn't need the equivalent of IPOD. It was common sense that we needed to build a new nation. And that's how the idea of what led to a coalition government in 1962 happened. It was only then, of course, unfortunately, our good friends in DP had refused to join the government. But DP had refused to join partly because of their issues with KY, not necessarily with the Uganda National People's Congress, as it were at the time. So, no, it is about the spirit of this thing. Again, as I said, on the basis of what I'm finding it uncomfortable, my brother Norbert has referred. It's sort of being used as a vehicle to coerce political parties and organizations that you're either with us or against us, or blackmail you that if you're not here, then you're not well behaved enough to know what national polity is all about. No, I think IPOD is a waste of time, waste of space. I'll bring you to the last elected government that I know in the 80s. Milton Obote and Paul Kawanga Semogere, while they're fundamentally opposed, politically, and while it was very clear that DP was actively supporting rebellion and military terror of NRA both in town here and in the bush, Milton Obote always courteously called Paul Semogere my brother Semogere. You taunt yourselves on issues in politics, in parliament, but you walk out together. That basically is merely all that we need to be able to see. I would like to see Mr. Museveni calling a young Robert Chagulanyi my little brother or my little son or my elder son or something along those. Of course, my young son, something like that. Have a conversation and
not be patronizing.
But because Mr. Museveni is such an old man and has been in power for such a long time and is such a grand man that calls people Bazukulu, actually, if he presented it well, he could score here, and for his political advisors, maybe get this cue from Ochieno for nothing. You could coin it in a manner in which
Beretta is here.
But whatever the case, I was trying to make sure that Beretta doesn't have so many questions to answer. But on a serious note, that really is the thing. It's about the spirit. It's about the leadership. The enabling environment that we require does not need IPOD. And to go ahead and then almost blackmail guys, including the likes of NUP, you're either part of this or you're not entitled to monies that you're appropriately entitled to on the basis of the numbers that you've got either in Parliament or what the law says that a registered political party with the numbers in Parliament should be able to get, is an open and clear way of telling us that, look, one group that is in charge is the group that makes decisions in the boardrooms, and the decisions made are not really from Uganda Road, whether either in the judiciary or in Parliament.
Okay, thank you. Henry, let me come to you still on IPOD. Just how effective do you think this vehicle is? And the fact that membership, IPOD membership is now a prerequisite for government funding. Where does it leave political pluralism?
So it actually sabotages that political pluralism. If you look at the very essence for which IPOD was created, it was to make sure that political competition existed side by side with political dialogue. And that, you see, political parties do not exist by and of themselves. So the political parties exist within a country, a jurisdiction called Uganda. That country, Uganda, is where all of us belong. So that country, Uganda, has a goal. In this case, we have the National Vision 2040 and many other visions coming up. So that's where we have decided to go as a country. So the political parties may have different strategies and tactics of getting there, but it should be that all of us are focusing there. So IPOD must be that space where we come, irrespective of the political differences. We come and say, okay, I am NUP, I am NRM, I am UPC. We have our own different ideologies, but the ultimate end is that Uganda must head there. This is how we think we should get there. So that when you come to IPOD, all these minor differences are put aside, and that we focus on the issues of systemic value, issues of national value, so that we pull together. So that regardless of the men and women, the characters that will be in office, Uganda continues to take the same direction. That was the very essence of IPOD. But that was not what happened eventually, because you see now they started politicizing it, and so a few people started not understanding what it was. And I think when NOP comes on board, I think that understanding wasn't there. I would imagine that after having lived under one man for 40 years, of course the feeling is different, and so the focus has been the tendency has been to summate all the problems of Uganda into one man, Museveni. I want to think that we need to look at the bigger picture. And now what has happened is that Museveni, by his nature, of course, he wants to domineer, wants to control. Does not want to relate with any political party unless that political party is towing his line. He cannot tolerate competition. He has never been a Democrat. I do not believe this man has ever been a Democrat. He's not one. Even when he was pretending to be advocating for a return to political parties, his message was to be Jeko. He never said, let us go back to democracy. So this is what I know. So what has happened is that today, we have a platform, a very good platform par excellence, that has been transformed into a tool for control, a tool for punish. It has actually been weaponized against those political parties that are not towing the line. So he would like to have political parties like the NUP behaving like our brothers in UPC, DP, who are aligned. NUP will not align, therefore let us punish it. And for me, the most painful thing is to use IPOD and in a way and manner that it now becomes a condition for the political parties to access our money. That is the most painful thing. This amendment that just happened, and Nakoti was here the other day, was with her. If she's listening, you will be remembered for having been complicit in a game that, vulgarized and undermined the very essence of IPOD. So now, NUP as a political party, NUP is a party, just as UPC and NRM, as having the interests of all of us Ugandans. When we contribute money to the national kitty, we want to make sure that they're operating and organizing. It is NUP that has gone and identified my brother here, George, with their resources, grooming him to come for the election, regardless of whether he wins or not. But they've presented him. That is a national service and a public utility. So they should be able to get this money, regardless of whether they are in the IPOD or not. So for me, as it is now, I think, but all is not lost. I am now becoming increasingly convinced that dialogue will be the only way to go. We need to continue dialoguing. Even when things have gone wrong, how do we get the vehicle back on track? But as it is now, the very essence of IPOD has been defeated.
So, George, I think your work is cut out for you pretty much, really, on the IPOD conversation. As a member of NUP, your party is not a member of IPOD. Do you think joining IPOD would be akin to, coercing parties into some sort of a state-sanctioned framework? Do you agree that also IPOD is perhaps being weaponized by the state to actually ensure that members that align to it or belong to it are supposed to toe a certain line that is already pushed for by the state?
Well,
and also, at some point, do you think you would reconsider joining IPOD?
Judith is asking a million questions, but I'll try to give the answers to all. One, joining a state-sanctioned organization wouldn't be harmful in itself, because we operate in the state. The question is the intentions. For starters, I should note that the National Unity Platform is petitioning the Constitutional Court, challenging that the manner in which that Political Parties Amendment Act was passed. And of course, as we all know, even the right to associate includes the right not to associate.
Yeah.
You don't force or coerce the right to associate. But let us look at the intentions or the said intentions, because of course the real intentions are not those which are said. The intention is apparently to promote dialogue. However, we have not lacked space of where to dialogue from. In fact, I want to agree partly with Henry that Mr. Museveni only wants to associate with people in a patronizing relationship. As a grandmaster, you saw the picture on the Daily Monitor 2 days ago, yesterday, where akin to a grandfather being received by his grandchildren. You could see the posture of those receiving him at the IPOD summit.
But he's a grandfather.
Yeah, I'm interpreting the picture. I'm interpreting the picture. And it was an almost subservient relationship where these people are happy to see him. And the issue is, IPOD has existed for a while when it was an NGO. In fact, Mr. Museveni used to criticize it. He used to criticize it when it was an NGO. Enoch talked about the National Consultative Forum, which is in the law, and which is a forum which brings together all parties. And and it has been meeting regularly. In fact, it's been chaired by NRM because it's chaired by, as per numerical strength. The current chair, Mr. Chiwanda, is NRM. So the National Consultative Forum has been meeting. Parties, it's a space, forum for parties to dialogue. Even if you talk about parties which sit in parliament, they have a forum to dialogue. The question is, how many opinions have been picked from the National Consultative Forum and have influenced policy or even the law? In fact, even this Political Parties and Amendment Act, Mr. Chiwanda is on record, who is NRM and is a chair, that they were not consulted. Imagine when they were consulted, they were discussing whether to amend the law to make IPOD a part of NCF. They were not consulted.
Could you repeat that, please?
The National Consultative Forum was not consulted among the key stakeholders when they were bringing this amendment. I can quote authoritative because I was with Mr. Chiwanda on a public show and he said it. So the intention of this amendment and this whole IPOD issue is meant to coalesce parties, to bring them on a table for a tea party. Unlike the tea party that Judith is giving us here, the coffee is giving, at least for us, we're talking.
Fantastic coffee. Fantastic coffee.
So unlike the coffee that Judith is serving us in studios, at
with
least
yellow bananas, to be fair.
Yes, and Joseph has been eating yellow bananas.
So you cannot run away from yellow.
Yes, that was on a lighter note.
I am sad.
Importantly, that at least here we are speaking and people can heard. The issue is that out of those that forum, there's nothing meaningful. So the intention is not for parties to dialogue. So why I say that, I partially agree with Henry, that whereas dialogue would be key, the question is you cannot dialogue with wrong motives. Dialogue is built on the foundation of truth. In fact,
and trust.
Mr. Mao once in a while speaks the truth. He says that there are two blocks, as per that clip, which I later learned that it's accurate. That there are those groups which are dialoguing, which are speaking about because he said the elections are not about transition. Transition is spoken about in other rooms, and he went ahead to classify some political groupings, which he says these ones are on the same table. So the question,
if you don't mind, for the record, UPC as a political party is not on that table. Individuals from Uganda People's Congress are on that table. This is for the record.
So Judith, the whole issue is the motives. The whole issue is that the intention is not for parties to sit down and dialogue and come up. The issue is to patronize the parties, to bring them onto some bit of and show a semblance that all these people pay homage to the Godfather.
Well, thank you. So, Joseph, your interjection was basically to the effect of what I said.
He was disagreeing with Mao.
Is it a forum for those already aligned with the current political order? And I think that's a yes. When you say individuals, it's not the party, it's individuals.
And that's extremely important, actually, because that's something else, and we are going to be discussing this. These kind of issues, even for those existing political parties, and I don't want to star rebellion in FDC and other political parties officially now aligned. These are matters of fundamental policy, including internal policies of political parties and organizations that internal organs of the parties ought to be able to debate, critique, and in many cases give authorizations for. But likewise, these are matters that should actually be part of now our national conversation as an election matter. Political parties take position that, well, in the event that we win elections, we will take this position, we will support this position, we are for dialogue and we're for this kind of dialogue. So that these things are critiqued, and you guys as a fourth estate, you break us up, make it easier and simpler for the ordinary citizen so that post-elections we take positions. But this table is rounded like this. All of us Ugandans, and thankfully I'm the seemingly closer to oldest on this table. My generation and younger, people want peace, people want national dialogue, people want national reconciliation, people want a situation in which a post-Museveni Uganda is one in which all of us live together in diversity.
Thank you.
That is not in contention.
Thank you, Joseph. We just have 4 minutes to 10 o'clock, and at exactly 10 we shall be taking a break. And I want to give this 4 minutes to you, Mr. Barata, because you are the one person from the ruling party versus the rest. And certainly
I am not from any party.
No, you're not. Yeah, you're not.
Enoch is the closest you have to government. Henry, feel comfortable.
So
it is your right.
Enoch is shielded. By the way, on his coming here, he was substantially surrounded by powerful security. This guy's okay.
So it's important that we give you as much time, of course, to also respond to some of the issues and criticisms that your colleagues are raising.
I think
starting with the weaponization of IPOD.
I think first of all, what my colleagues here have said fundamentally, essentially, really, is that we agreed on the need for IPOD, we agreed on the purpose of IPOD, we agreed on the objectives of IPOD, and where it should stand in our politics. What, however, I note is there seems to be a problem, and this is not just here right now, but generally in our politics. We seem to be unable to separate personalities from actual concepts and actual objectives. And once we do not do that, if you don't want to go for an IPOD meeting because President Museveni as the person is there, or Norbert Mao is there, or somebody, then you have a fundamental, then you have a different problem. That is not a problem of principle. It is a completely different problem. It's probably a problem of prejudice, but not one of principle. Now, there is no, of course, to say that IPOD is weaponized. I mean, that is a high case of malapropism. The word weaponization is completely, of course, different. What happened? I think George stated it. I think well, though not very directly, that IPOD was made now was transitioned from being a mere NGO to being a body that is provided for under the laws, and I think that is fundamental. I think that speaks to the work that IPOD has done over the years, even in its previous status. So there is a recognition that it has worked, there is a recognition that can be better, and so let's provide for it. The other part is we must remember that this amendment bill was a private members bill. So the issue of who was consulted and what not.
Private members, like
quote unquote. A private member bill. A private member could have consulted the other MPs, need not maybe have consulted the NCF and so on and so forth. But the important thing is, what is the objective? Now, if we are talking about the idea of funding parties that are represented in the parliament is democratic. It goes back to say, if you cannot even demonstrate the support of the people, then why are you being funded? So that is why they fund parties that are represented in the parliament. But of the NCF. In other words, they are not saying, no, you will not consider you and whatnot, but they are saying, okay, no, even these parties that do not have representation in the parliament should be incorporated because they probably have representation at some local government level or some other part in the structure. So for me, I think if we focus on the principles that IPOD is established for, that it is supposed to achieve, and the National Consultative Forum, and if we are honest enough that indeed we want to be able to move our country together despite the divergence of methodology, then we will see that IPOD must work. It is not enough to say we can always talk without some loose structure. Being deliberate about anything is always a good thing. So being deliberate, let's form a body that we all commit to. Commitment is important, like we commit to relationships and all these other things. So let us commit to a body, and we don't say, no, me I'm talking on the side and me I'm talking on the side. Let's come together and commit and say we will talk together for the purpose of pushing our country ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Barata. So we're going to take a break, but when we return, well, we're going to be looking at the comments made recently by Honorable Norbert Mao. Uganda's transition is being discussed in the rooms that matter. Mm-hmm. What could these rooms that matter be? Of course, the question of transition is one that Ugandans have grappled with for a very long time. For some, the writing was or is clear on the wall. For others, there has been no clarity, while for some, the truth has been spoken for long, but in coded language. Has the Honorable Norbert Mao finally decoded this for Ugandans? We'll be discussing this after the break. Welcome back from the break. It's 4 minutes past 10 o'clock. Glad you're still with us here on KFM VPN. This Saturday, the 20th of September, 2025. I'm Judith Atim, your host. We're discussing matters shaping the political space ahead of nominations, and I have with me in the studio Mr. Enoch Barata, Director Legal Affairs at the NRM Secretariat, Mr. Joseph Acheno, political commentator, UPC ideologue, Mr. Henry Muguzi, Executive Director, Alliance for Finance Monitoring, and Mr. George Musisi, Advocate / MP aspirant for Kira Municipality, also a member of the National Unity Platform Party. So today we've been discussing the IPOD membership before we went into the break. Now we want to dissect the question of Uganda's transition as articulated by the Honorable Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, who is also the President of the Democratic Party, Norbert Mao. Uganda's transition is being discussed in the rooms that matter. So what could these rooms that matter be? I'll start with you. Should I start with you, Enoch?
No harm.
Okay. So can you decode these rooms for us? We need to just make sense of this, and also the implications, of course, of such a statement coming from a high-ranking government official. How can this message be interpreted? Is the minister referring to some back-channel negotiations? Is he talking about a specific framework for dialogue, or is it something else entirely? And also, what does this statement imply about the role of the public and the ballot box, for that matter? Is he undermining the citizens' right to determine who their leaders should be?
I think the comments, first of all, must be contextualized. And the context is quite simple. The context is that when Norbert spoke, when Honorable Mao was speaking, he spoke at the same time when the IPOD summit was going on. So essentially, what Honorable Norbert Mao was telling you is that the transition is discussed collectively by the political players. It is not simply a question, it is not a one-off. And that is the realistic thing, is that you do not, the word transition in itself infers a process. It does not infer a one-off event, because a one-off event is simply a change. A transition infers a process. So there is a process, and that process cannot simply be arriving on the election day. There must be things that are done, things that are built up before you actually get to the voting day. And those things are agreeing. For example, and this is the relevance of the National Consultative Forum and the IPOD, agreeing where do we want to go? What are the basics that we cannot do without? What must we see? What must we agree that whether it is Joseph or Henry or George coming, what are those basics that we can say, Joseph, when you come in, we want as a basic, all of us must have red caps. And then you can add on anything else. The pens can be whichever color, but the basic should be that we use red caps. That is what a transition discussion is about. So I do not see anything untoward. I do not see anything strange about what Honorable Mao was saying, and unless we just want to sensationalize a matter. But that is the reality of things, is that a transition infers that there is a process, and that is how it is done worldwide. There is a process, there is a build-up, there is agreement. If you recall, even we have had several transitions, incidentally. We have had several transitions. In 1986, we had a National Resistance Council and what we called a broad-based government. Then it transitioned to a movement system of government, which was based on individual merit, etc., etc. Then we transitioned into a political party system of government, and all these are on the basis of some discussion that has happened. And that discussion, I think the biggest national discussion we have had was the Constituent Assembly, and that in itself was a transition. So people having a discussion about a transition is not something new, it is not strange. In fact, it is the recommended thing, it is the appropriate thing to do. So there is no, I think there is no contradiction to my mind.
Okay, thank you. So Joseph, I'm coming to you on the same issue of our transition, but we also know the Constitution says all power belongs to the people, who will express their will and consent through regular, free and fair elections and referenda, and also that the state should be based on democratic principles that encourage the active participation of all citizens in their own governance. If we are to reframe Norbert Mao's statement that Uganda's transition is being discussed in the rooms that matter, where then does it leave the citizens who do not have access to these rooms that matter?
Yeah.
And is their will being fully expressed in these rooms?
In normal times, Norbert Mao is one of the finest lawyers in this country. I've told you that Norbert is a friend of somebody I've known for quite some time. At the peak of Norbert's rising to the political secretary post to Makerere, I engaged with him particularly and including while I was away. Some of the conversations about repealing of Article 269 of the NRA Constitution, that bad political parties, were substantially engaged around that. I also happen to know a number of people who went to law school because of Norbert Mao. I will want to say here that Enoch, when Norbert joined you guys as a minister, a lady whom I've never met, a lawyer who used to follow me in the media, rang me and told me not to engage her anymore. Possibly on the other end of political spectrum, she was saying that, well, if Norbert Mao joins this regime and could betray them that they were looking up to, then she couldn't trust anybody. In other words, she used that benchmark to decide that possibly even Anocheno could not be trusted on this. So this is a very important point. But next to that, Enoch here is the director of legal for the NRM. NRM is the governing political organization. The legislation and everything else that NRM, if they are doing it properly as political parties, they should be taking instructions from Chad on the road. So all matters legal, the head of legal for this political organization is actually here with us, and that's Enoch. So Enoch, if you talk about transition, the way you're responding to the question of rooms that matter, that Norbert Mao said, and Judith, as you raise, it's very clearly the case that the issue of transition is not a bedroom matter, it's not a backroom matter, it's a national matter. So you can't talk transition in the manner in which Norbert said, and you simply say that, well, you know, you see, and people are blowing this out of proportion. I can tell you it's a very, very serious matter. In fact, it's something akin almost to seeking to overthrow our national constitution.
But what is the role of representation? Because I need to understand that from your perspective.
very
What
good.
is the role of representation?
So right now, the back room that nobody's talking about, is that the representation? Are those the legislators?
Because if you are political parties, I would want to assume that you are representing some sort of constituency.
With absolute respect, since I have this, with absolute respect, if it is that conversation about composition and the form of government, this guy is the director of legal affairs at NRM. But as far as politics is concerned and democratic process is concerned, I'm a mini expert. No, representation is about power belonging to all the peoples of the republic, and when it's being exercised through the legislative process, it is in parliament. And so therefore Norbert Mao, who's been a parliamentarian and, as I said, is a lawyer, the backroom thing, because the issue here is this funny dubious rooms that is going to determine our transition. This is a conversation that should be held at the National Assembly, not in the back rooms, and that's the point. Quickly,
I actually disagree. Because you see, what is the role again of the legislature?
But Joseph, just a minute. So the role of the legislator is to legislate. But however, on the question of transition, Enoch, in all due fairness, we have never had a discussion on transition on the floor of Parliament. I stand to be corrected if any of you has heard this, but there is no record whatsoever. So the representation we are asking is,
but it is
how is the will of Ugandans being represented in the rooms? That's why I'm asking, what are these rooms?
And this is
because if it's in the room that we know, the legislative house, we've not seen or heard of such a discussion.
Yes, and I agree. You see, we talk about structure. Let us understand how this is structured. Parliament legislates. In the strictest sense, it does not discuss politics as such. So Parliament has put in place for you and said, we are putting in place a national consultative forum. We are putting in place the IPOD. Those are the rooms.
A national consultative forum which was not consulted when a law was being drafted.
The National Consultative Forum, the National Consultative Forum has all the political parties that have representation in the Parliament. Now, and you must follow the structure. The National Consultative Forum, right? Yes, all registered political parties. And then you have IPOD as well now. So you must connect the dots. The NCF and IPOD, those are the rooms that Mao is talking about. And you must be in those rooms. And that is where representation of the people is.
Judith, English language is one of my strengths from an academic perspective, all the way starting from Nagongara Primary School, by the way. Look, we are not discussing semantics. It is simply from the statement made by Norbert Mao. Norbert Mao was not talking about IPOD. Interestingly, he was not even talking about any other consultative forum. He was talking about some dubious back room, which is basically what we're saying. And in any case, take it back to the people. As you rightly say, has it ever been discussed in Parliament? I just want to say that, look, I get a bit concerned because, as I said, Enoch, I think I'm putting you on the spot here. Enoch is the legal head of the political organization that is governing this country. And Enoch technically should be the lead legal advisor. I get rather concerned by the line that you're taking on this. But anyway, whatever happens, IPOD or no IPOD, just as by the by, just to pass on the mic, a future UPC government would seek to delegislate the process of funding political parties, because I can see part of this is the deal making by these organizations that used public resources to blackmail political parties and individuals. Because I also know that the people who are going to this dubious IPOD business for money for their political organization in some cases, but many more for monies for themselves to misappropriate public funds.
Thank you. Henry, I think I'll pass the same question to you. What does the statement imply about the role of the public and the ballot box?
Thank you, Judith. I want to look at that statement very objectively. And I want to re-echo the words I used in the beginning. If you look at the democracy we have, and it's quote-unquote democracy, the democratic fundamentals that must be in place in order for a country to transfer power from one individual to the other are not in place. And therefore, you cannot think you're going to use an election to transfer power from Mr. Museveni to another candidate. And the only transfer by the transition we're talking about here is from Mr. Museveni, who is in the evening of his life, to another person. That's what we're talking about. And by the way, this transition is being discussed in many rooms, including studios, like now. We are. Now, because you see, our elections...
Yeah, by the way, he said it is not... The decision will not be made in studios.
No, I know, but... Any composite Ugandan who loves the peaceful country will be concerned and will discuss. In religious circles, they're discussing how do we get from here. Now, because elections are so commercialized, the power of the people is not there. The consent of the people to determine who gets to govern them is controlled. You cannot base on this election. And Mao is telling the truth. And I want to speak about the elephant in the room. Because we cannot use an election to transfer power from Mr. Museveni to another person. And also because we do not want to go back to bombing ourselves. We have had enough of that. Dialogue must be the way to go. Now, the problem with Ugandans and most of these political party leaders, including the NOP here, is the notion that first of all, you cannot have a dialogue without participation of Mr. Museveni. This is the eldest man we have. You cannot take away his credentials as a statesman, as a political, what is it called, a luminary. So this guy has his credentials. He is also the sitting head of state. He must participate in any dialogue. Unfortunately, one of these political parties think that just being seen in the company or neighborhood of Museveni is enough to discredit you. This Nope here.
Would you blame them?
Wait. Nope. You see, that is now looking at the smallest picture. Nope fears to be seen anywhere near Museveni. That would mean they're compromised. That is being politically mature. This man Museveni always gave dialogue a chance. You remember when he was in the bush? When he went to Nairobi to discuss, to do the peace talks with the Okello government? The guy was there. Himself, they interfaced with Okello. He did not say, the moment I'm seen seated with Okello and the photographs are taken, I'm done. So I think I want to urge and request the political leaders in this country that it is imperative that we understand and understand that we have to dialogue with this guy. For you to say I'm not going to IPOD because we don't want to be seen photographed with Museveni. You see, being photographed with him does not mean you've sold out. So this is the problem. So we need to now get to the drawing board and say, let all the stakeholders come on board. We are not going to transit. And by the way, we better do this quickly because you see, Museveni does not have, I don't know how many years he has, only God knows. But we need to start this discussion now and ensure that this country does not get back to the transition we know how. And if we don't, then there will be other forces that will take, occupy the space.
Well, thank you. I don't think I have to really ask you the question, but from what I picked from, Henry says we can't use an election to change power.
That's what Henry said.
In the current Uganda.
In the current
from Museveni to another person through an election. I would bet.
Are you saying I'm wasting time?
No,
I don't know. You can try, but I'm looking at.
And also, your stance as Noop, are you politically immature to sit and dialogue with the regime?
What is your fear? What are you fearing?
Henry, it's my chance.
It is okay.
Yeah, don't act like the other man who calls people for iPod. Anyhow, Henry says Nope fears to take photo ops. I don't think a political party. I don't think that a political party should be prioritize photo ops as the most important thing. In fact, when he was looking for an example to give for dialogue, he had to go 42 years back. That he had to go to 1985 when Museveni engaged in dialogue. You put Nope out of the picture. You can give us other examples of before Nope of where Museveni dialogued successfully with opposition political parties. You yourself, you have on this show said that the relationship of Mr. Museveni and the parties is to dictate over them, to grandstand yourself. And now you're saying the man wants to... The issue is to contextualize Mr. Mao's words. You have to look at, and I want to relate it with what Henry is saying, you have to look at what Mr. Mao himself said 3 years ago when he was joining cabinet. He promised Ugandans a transition. He promised Ugandans a constitution amendment. He promised Ugandans to start talking about issues of reconciliation. And you know that a few months later, Mr. Museveni said, no, you've never joined to talk about transition. In fact, in the issue of transition, Mr. Museveni has been clear publicly. He has said no transition will happen through the laws. That's what he has said. Now, Mr. Mao, of all the things he promised us 3 years ago, he has not achieved anything. He has not done anything. Even, in fact, a year ago, I remember when he was opening the Chapter 4 Convention, and at one point in time, he was a guest of honor at the Rule of Law. The Law Society was launching a Rule of Law report. And he was talking the same remarks that Mr. Kahindo Tafile is saying today. About 6 weeks ago, Mr. Mao promised us amendments to electoral laws. He was opening the groundbreaking of the EC offices. He said there is a law in the cabinet and it's going to be brought soon on biodata, capturing biodata and blah, blah, blah. And never mind that the roadmap, the EC roadmap was already moving. Now, that law has not even reached Parliament yet, a few days to nomination. The reason why I'm trying to draw all this context is that, like the biblical verse that they have done what they're not supposed to do, and they're doing what they ought not to do. Mr. Mao seems to be caught up in a mix of what because like Joseph said, he is a very brilliant person, a very fine lawyer, and he knows. However, he's caught up between what he would want to say and the ideals he joined the government with. I don't think that Mr. Mao believed in what he was saying then, that they are going to discuss transition. Mm-hmm. But having failed on all the things he expected, I think he has given up. Now, even if you're looking at these remarks of saying that,
If you don't mind, maybe he believed it then, and by the way, this is a genuine observation. Maybe he believed it then, maybe he went there with the intentions, but maybe, to be fair to him, of the last few days, he's come to the realization that the mission was impossible, and this sort of is the reality. And I think, like all of us have been saying, he's now being the honest himself, telling us, well, guys, you're on your own as a nation today.
But what I'm saying, he has been contradicted publicly by Mr. Museveni on the issues of transition. And the question is, if a Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs says that, no, the constitutional mechanism of bringing about transition, we should forget it, what picture does it send? If you are saying that this transition is not through elections, and these elections are not supposed to be, and that is the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, what message does it send? So which rooms are those? Who are the stakeholders in those rooms? And I don't want to agree with Mr. Barata that he meant IPOD and what. No, I'm sure he meant other inner rooms, which I'm sure even Mr. Mao may not have access to. But the point is, we just have to look at what we want for the country. Whereas Henry is an enthusiast of dialogue. I wouldn't have a problem with dialogue and national conciliation. The question is, under what parameters is that dialogue going to happen? Under what auspices, if outside the law? Because, like we've said, if you are to draw the intentions of anyone, you have to look at precedents. What precedents do we have of these people dialoguing with good faith? The precedents would have been what happens in Parliament, the precedents have been what happens in the National Consultative Forum, and so on and so forth. Those forums, you see that the relationship is always one party trying to pretend over the others, trying to bully the others. Dialogue is not built on such auspices. So I think it's...
I think the problem is also when you personalize these things, you tend to become egoistic. So when you have a weak ego, you have problems like Henry was talking about, of not wanting just to be seen with one person.
Well, and
you must be able to set that aside and say, I am going, at least tell us that I went, I tabled this proposition, it was rejected, and out of principle I also walked out. But you can't say I will not go entirely because I won't sit on the same table with Henry.
Enoch, you know that you have to look at precedents to determine the outcome of what is going to happen. You see that there are people who have been having those meetings and sit-ups for so long. Even this year alone, political party heads have met Mr. Museveni at least twice, apart from the one which happened this week. So the question is,
did Robert attend?
No. So you just have to look at what has been happening over time. And I wanted Henry to draw me to one of those summits, even prior to NOP, which says that when they dialogued over this, these were the outcomes, these were the changes. Because it's not going to happen in a vacuum. To imagine that it's a photo issue, for me, I think it's reducing it. But the issue, what is the intention? Look at the spaces, because even in Parliament, parties talk. There's a leader of opposition. in Parliament. Even in Parliament, there's a space for dialogue. There's a space for parties to meet. What is the form of interaction between the leader of opposition?
You see, that man Museveni has to be a part of that dialogue. And I want to draw your attention to the Mandela issue. You remember at the time he's incarcerated, that apartheid government, in fact, de Klerk, was it de Klerk or Botha? Yeah. They swore that it will never happen that a black man...
Both of them did, yeah.
You understand? But you see, he never gave up. And you see, human beings are human beings. The thoughts of Museveni today are not the thoughts of Museveni 10 years back. The thoughts of Museveni 10 years from today or 5 years are not going to be the thoughts of Museveni. You see, people keep changing. Even you, George. What used to matter for me 10 years ago is not what matters today. There are some things that have emerged to matter more than they mattered 10 years back. So maybe, just maybe, time will come when you will say, okay, the reality is I'm awake. There is a country. What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? Do I want to be remembered as a grandfather of this country, or ones that came and wrecked it and left it in tatters? So I think let us not give up. Let us continue dialoguing so that we keep also changing our positions for the good of the country. I think at one time he will give in. Yes, there is no history that he has, objectively and dialogued and the things have worked. But just maybe there will be this opportunity.
In which case to you, in which case to you, George, if I understand where my brother here is coming from when it comes to this dialoguing thing, I take a very strong position on NRA, and it's known. I think part of the nuances, and you talked about perception, and perception is extremely important in politics. Maybe, Judith, one of the perceptions around town is that that in the event in which all of us Ugandans found ourselves somewhere in the compounds of Parliament, or perhaps somewhere at Kololo, which has now been occupied by... Suppose Kololo was liberated and there was a free space for all of us. Mr. Museveni and the Enochs are having tea at a particular corner, and we're moving around the compound. What is the likelihood that young Mr. Robert plus yourselves would find yourselves comfortably mixing together and up to and including shaking hands together with Mr. Museveni? I told you that he actually shakes them conditionally. But what are your own positions? Would you be comfortable doing that, or would you be concerned about a possible photo op presenting maybe to a particular audience that, no, you guys can't move closer to these guys?
Okay. I think let's take a break. It's 10:31. This is VP, and when we return, of course, I want us to still have one last discussion about this rooms that matter thing. How do such statements affect public trust in the electoral process and the democratic institutions of Uganda? Welcome back. It's 25 minutes to 11 o'clock. This is KFM VPN. My name is Judith Atim. We're discussing the matters shaping the political space ahead of the nominations. I have with me Mr. Enoch Barata, Director, Legal Affairs, NRM Secretariat. Mr. Joseph Acheno, political commentator and UPC ideologue. Mr. Henry Muguzi, Executive Director, Alliance for Finance Monitoring. And Mr. George Musisi, an advocate, MP aspirant for Kura Municipality, member of the National Unity Platform Party. So we're still discussing the Honorable Minister Norbert Mao's statements on transition, and I want us to now discuss how such a statement affects public trust in the electoral process and the democratic institutions of the country. Does it enhance public trust, or does it weaken it, Mr. Enoch Barata?
I think, as we have been discussing, it is a question of being objective and understanding what it is that the discussion is about. And first of all, once you have understood what the discussion is about, strip it of the personalities. Then say, is this objectively sensible that we should be discussing a transition? Is it objectively sensible that there should be a dialogue? And the answer you will find is 100% yes. What a lot, of course, has been said about Honorable Mao's comments, but I think what he simply stated is that you get nowhere with two diametrical, or with two extreme positions. You get nowhere. You must be able to reach a compromise. In other words, every position must be able, every party must be able to reach a point of compromise if you are to have effective and meaningful dialogue. So, to that extent, for me, I think the general public should be very confident that there is a group of political players in Uganda that are ready and willing to dialogue for the benefit of Uganda. There is a group of Ugandans, there is a group of political actors and leaders in this country that are willing to moderate extremism and be able to achieve a dialogue for the betterment of the country, and that there is a commitment, to avoid any activities that would create instability, insecurity, or the breakdown of law and order in the country. And that is very, very fundamental. And I think that is the confidence that the majority of Ugandans want. The majority of Ugandans want to know, are we stable? Can we count on this stability in the long term? Are we secure? Can we count on this security in the long term? And then, can we, while we are in this stability and this security, can we have democracy in the long term? It is a building process, and I think Ugandans are people who know, who have learned how to build and are ready to continue building.
Okay, and before I move on, you talk about voices to moderate extremism. Who is or are the extremists in this case?
The extremists in this case are people who think that they should take us the violent path. Anybody who thinks that they should take us the violent path, anybody who thinks that other people are not worth talking to, that is those are the extremists we are talking about.
Does that include defy everything?
The one who thinks defy everything, the one who says I cannot sit with Ocheno under any circumstances.
The one who
I will not sit with him.
Who disagrees with him.
One who shoots,
that kidnaps them.
That is an extreme position.
So if someone kidnaps and brutalizes another based on their political opinion,
tortures,
that would also be an extremist, right?
If it is based on their political, on their political thinking, absolutely, that is extremism. If, on the other hand, the people are being arrested for criminal offenses, that is a different thing, and you can deal with it. But if it is strictly speaking to say that I am persecuting somebody for their political beliefs, that would be extreme. That is an extreme fundamentalist position.
So we really have extreme fundamentalist positions within the governing political organization.
The NRM government has fought against that extremism and has continued to fight that extremism, and it will continue to fight that extremism. But it will not be blackmailed into ignoring criminal activity or just simply because you are trying to dress it up as political ideology. If it is a criminal activity, it is a criminal activity, full stop.
How about criminal activity from the state?
Yes,
criminal activity from the
shooting people.
54 people were shot on the streets of Kampala as per the government report in November 2020. Where has the NRM government delivered justice by punishing the people who were commanding? The government reports said 54 people were died due to stray bullets, and only 11 of those were protesters. That is as per the government report. Where are the missing Ugandans? Where is Sam Mugumya? So any government which is concerned with dialogue and reconciliation and all, it's that age-old quotation by the Archbishop Desmond Tutu that peace, reconciliation and dialogue is built on a foundation of truth, honesty and justice and fairness. Now Henry wants people to dialogue when a boot is on their neck. That's what Henry is saying. Why don't you dialogue? Why don't you come for the photo? When the boot is on your neck, a political party can't even organize.
Dialogue when his hands were cuffed.
No, Mandela was an individual. I'm talking about people who can't even be.
I don't think Mandela was an individual, sir.
No, the dialogue didn't take place with the entire ANC. Yes.
I don't think Mandela was an individual.
Yeah,
and I think the point that Henry was making is that actually that dialogue that was tried for so many years by the apartheid regime only managed to succeed when they engaged Mandela.
Yes.
And that will tell you that Mandela was not.
No, what I'm saying, Mandela the person was in custody, but I'm talking about that let's not lose track of the principle. Enoch, that was your point. Let's not lose track of the principle. That the principle is that real dialogue and reconciliation is built on a foundation of fairness. You don't, the quotation that we should never fear to dialogue, but we should never dialogue out of fear. That is the intention. So it's not about the photo op. That is being too simplistic. The issue is that there are bigger issues beyond the photo op. In any case, we are not short of photo ops with politicians. They're not short of them.
There's one
which was on the
one that matters most.
There was one of the Daily Monitor this week. There was a good photo op. Didn't you see that, Henry?
I want us to stick on public trust. You know, what do these utterances mean for public trust in institutions and electoral processes?
Judith, I'll contextualize it, but I'll still use South Africa if you don't mind. I have substantial ideas about how and what happened leading to the end of apartheid, and I've had the privilege to engage many of the parties involved. It only became critically important after and including the involvement of Cubans in Angola, when the reality was for the apartheid regime that this thing could not be resolved militarily. So it works both ways. The apartheid regime had come to the reality that apartheid was unsustainable, so something had to be done. From the Africans' perspective that we backed, including those of us in UPC, it was also a reality that these guys, we're not going to push these guys down the sea. So somehow had to dialogue. Bring us back to the Republic of Uganda, unfortunately. While we acknowledge that they're extremists, both sides, Enoch, back to your end. There is a tendency within NRA that believes in some, not only impunity, but a sense of entitlement. But beyond that, the feeling that you can't do anything to us, dare us like little spoiled kids. That, in my opinion, is part of the problem. Leadership needs to come from the top of NRA. Enoch, is your job as the legal chief of this political organization to persuade them that it's actually possible for us to have a middle ground. In any case, actually, even in the highest of all courts, judges will always ensure that before they come to particular resolutions, that parties have been encouraged to mediate. Where we are at the moment, I think it is almost like a winner takes all. And unfortunately, as I said, I will go back to Norbert statement. Norbert's statement of the last few days was much more grandstanding. It does not help public opinion at all. And maybe where George again is also right, is that if you look historically at how the trajectory of peace talks and negotiations that has involved Mr. Museveni, the score rates are terribly bad. In fact, it's sort of zero, except the one with the Moses Alis. Zero, except with the ones of Moses Alis. But that said, what do we do and how do we contribute to breaking that? I think it's still possible that a critical mass emerge in the middle, away from the extremes. Constructively engage, but constructively engage on terms. Unfortunately, the group of the willing, the coalition of the willing, seem to be already compromised group of predominantly men in political parties and organizations whose possibly decisions and conversations have now also been so exclusive that there's even a saying that, look, maybe you guys in NUP are not welcome here. That's sort of a bit of my mini worry. But I also know the extremist elements elsewhere. I think we will not be able to resolve these matters unless all political players and political parties are engaged. But we'll also not be able to deal unless the ordinary citizens, and that's your question, are critically involved. At the moment, the view and feelings I get across the country is that people are waiting for some kind of time, and people are waiting for some kind of Jesus, and even people in critical positions, including some of our friends in NRM and Enoch, that people have put up their hands so much that they're waiting for an outcome beyond what Utafire is talking about. That generally is worrying. So if you could see an Utafire within the context of today's conversation, how do you expect an average Mr. Lubwama somewhere in Chiboga to have confidence in where we are at the moment that there will be dialogue? But like Henry is saying, and all of us agree, we must continue pushing this. But it will only happen when the side that considers itself the victor, the powerful, recognizes that they really don't have it all. I said in 2007 at a Milton Obote Memorial Lecture that some of us, and it was very deliberate, that some of us opted, and as a matter of policy as UPC Henry, in the 90s as young guys, backed by and led by our President Milton Obote, that we shall seek change politically, legally and diplomatically. And I declared then, Judith, that if we do not take that route, one, I would be a general, and I repeat that today. Two, I would possibly be dead. But three, NRA in its current form would not be in government. The only problem is that it would have caused huge amount of death. I hope that position is noted. We had to give peace the alternative. Our friends in NRA ought to recognize what Mr. Chen is saying. I would be a general.
We have about 10 minutes.
I would possibly be dead, but NRA would not be what it is at the moment. But who at the center is the citizen of this country. I think we need to begin to examine our conscience.
Thank you. Henry, public trust.
Thank you. A very good question, and I like that. So when we speak about public trust in elections, let me give you a few scenarios. You have districts in this country where voters have never seen how a ballot paper looks like. Every time they come to vote, they tell them, you have voted, go back. They don't know how it looks like. Can such a voter have public trust in elections? You have other districts in this country where elections are seen as a marketplace to buy and sell votes. So they will only vote for that pays them most. Can such voters have trust in elections when they have actually, what is it called, misconstrued elections to mean a time to harvest money? Those cannot be. You have leaders who get to be voted into office not to serve the public but to serve self through personal enrichment. They forget the electorate from the first day they step into they swear in. Can a society like that have trust in elections? So this is the situation of Uganda. So like I said, the public trust is not there. Again, we cannot achieve transition through this election process. But let me tell you another thing. I like it when Ndugu Joseph speaks about this scenario of not existing beyond Museveni. And I think, President Museveni is a very intelligent man. I think he looks and sees that this outfit that came as a revolutionary movement, morphed itself into a political party, can actually not live beyond him, because it has failed to adjust to the changes of time. So it has turned out to be predatory, and so it has no future. I don't actually believe that when Museveni is gone, like Ndugu Obote went, we will have an NRM standing, or it might be in the same state as the UPC, which Ndugu is saying a future UPC government. And I was about to ask him, is it the farthest future? Which future?
It is the future. UPC is the future.
Yeah. But of course, we are not short. There's no shortage of objective people, of objective minds, such as the mind of Utafire. I actually listened to this man on my TV, and I was like, oh, this guy, we still have good people inside there, or people that are seeing things objectively.
Quite many, actually.
The challenge is that those that are self-seeking and they are using the system, to the contrary, are so many that voices like those are crowded out. But I think all is not lost. We still have to continue working towards making sure that we have a stable country, a stable Uganda, where everyone will live happily, and that we shall avoid bloodshed, and that peace can be achieved, and that the transition can be achieved as well.
Thank you, Henry. We have about 7 minutes to go, and I just have one last question, and this is just for you, George, because I think it would be unfair if we don't talk about this. The developments by the EC, the revised electoral roadmap, and the statement that your party, NUP, has fallen short of signatures from 18 districts. What is the significance of this development? to your NUP's participation in the elections. Do you look at this as a procedural roadblock that your party can overcome, or do you think this is some kind of political maneuver meant to actually create problems for your party so that it doesn't participate in the coming elections completely?
Well, I think it's meant to just distract and disorganize us. I don't think that I've just seen a letter also written to General Mugisha Muntu talking about the same thing. It takes a very brave individual to imagine that Katumba Oye and a couple of other people have gathered signatures and Mugisha Muntu and NUP have failed. So it's
who is Katumba Oye?
You don't know your fellow presidential candidate?
Of course, unlike Joseph, this Katumba has already returned the signatures. Joseph hasn't. But more importantly, or more seriously, it all goes back to how EC does its work. For over 10 days now, actually not 10, about 7 days, we've been asking EC for feedback on the signatures we submitted. And we even had to station a person there to wait. So the manner in which they did this casts doubt on even the authenticity of their statements. For you to wait for only 2 working days prior to the nomination, in the afternoon, actually less than 2, because our party president is due for nomination on Tuesday morning, and they communicated this on Friday at 3 p.m. Not midday. Okay. Yes. So it all goes back. I remember when we submitted our amendments to the Constitution over 2 years ago to the EC, they took over a year without giving us feedback. In fact, it took a letter from the SG to the chairperson saying, we submitted the Constitution last year, how far? Then that's when they said, okay, we've now received the letter caveating it. So it all goes back to the intentions. It goes back to, because perceptions, like Joseph said, that I agree, are important, especially the public trust you're talking about in public bodies is only built on the way you are perceived to do your things. I don't think that there's any good faith, but most importantly, it's meant to distract us. It's meant to disorganize our preparations for not just the nomination, but the process. And like you've seen, the party has let out a public call from over 36 signature districts for people to bring their signatures to the party offices today. How
many districts did you initially submit?
133. Yeah, yes.
So in other words, you failed in nearly 40.
And we submitted, the requirement is 98.
No, but you get what I'm saying, yes.
Yes.
So between 98 and 130, so meaning in 40 districts, you failed to meet, allegedly.
Yes, and that's what they're saying.
That's extraordinary.
And then the other issue...
18. I had 18.
No, you've not understood what he's saying.
Yes, and the other issue is
it's tongue in cheek, basically.
Yeah.
And I've had even people from other parties complaining. I think I've had it from Jimmy Akena. I don't know whether to say Joseph was party president or
no, of course not.
We have 3 minutes.
Yes.
The facto party president is here.
He's also asking that how comes internal security is calling numbers of people we gave to EC. So as EC is ISO part of EC's department in EC, because some of the people are complaining that we are being called by GISOs, by DISOs to ascertain whether we signed. And of course, you know what happens when a woman, a farmer in Gomba, is called by DISO. Did you sign?
That is intimidation.
So it's meant to intimidate, and of course, all this goes back to the EC's desk.
Well, thank you very much. Gentlemen, I need us to wind up, so I'll just give everyone about 1.5 minutes each to just give us your concluding remarks or your final thoughts on the issues that you think are shaping the political space, as we count down to the nominations next week. Enoch, starting with you.
Thank you, Judith, again, and thank you for hosting me with these fine gentlemen. I think for me, my take and my invitation to our listeners and the people of Uganda is that we should commit ourselves and focus on meaningful development of our country, and that meaningful development is not just in terms of wealth creation, which is our main thrust these days, but generally speaking, in how we live communally. I also take this opportunity, of course, to invite all Ugandans to come join us on 23rd when we get nominated. And we'll be happy for your support. But what I am confident about...
So join you at the EC, or you're having a rally somewhere?
We'll probably have a rally at some point.
So the supporters should find you at
the rally venue. We are not going to have processions and things like that.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Joseph?
No, I think I just want to say that I hope Ugandans wake up to the realities on the basis of the headlines we've had this week. Most Ugandans ought to know that they're on their own. But whatever happens, whoever's engaging in the political process, people just need to make sure that we should restore politics of values like UPC gave this country, consider the moral fabrics of the Republic of Uganda, look at the big issues in this country, including unemployment that leads to our people being used and abused and exploited by guys who are at the helm of the state.
Thank you, Henry. In about
mine is just a clarion call to the Electoral Commission, especially the Justice Byabakama, that you see it's a contingent on you to deliver an election that will be somewhere near peaceful, fair, credible, so that everyone feels they had a chance, and if they lost fairly, and if they win fairly. Thank you.
And lastly, George?
An election is a process, and I hope the Commission knows this, taking it up from where Henry is saying that anything that falls short of that process, everything that we are driving towards to right now, goes to the root of the credibility of that outcome. Unfortunately, of course, even Henry, as is calling on Justice Byabakama, has said he doesn't believe that the election will deliver anything. So I think maybe Mr. Byabakama also has a similar mindset.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your insights and for making time to be on KFM VPN. We've been talking about matters shaping the political space ahead of the nominations. Thank you, Enoch Barata. Thank you, Joseph Ocheno, Henry Muguzi, and you, Mr. George Musisi. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. My name is Judith Atim. VPN returns next Saturday at the same time. Do join us then. From me and the team here, we're wishing you a pleasant weekend.
Two things will happen.